Well, hello and good morning, everybody. How you doing? This is Jeremiah, and we are having our last webinar of the year. So I hope you're ready. We thought a good topic for this one would be to kind of just wrap up a lot of the neat development we did over the year. So we got something pretty exciting for you here to kind of see some of the vast amount that we do. I mean, it's hard for people here to keep up, with an update every single week. So we understand it's tough, but we thought this would be fun to recap some of the highlights and also to show you a little bit behind the scenes of what it takes here to pull that sort of stuff off. I have a couple super quick housekeeping items before we get into it. At the bottom of your screen is a little Q&A button, question and answer. I'd recommend go ahead and click that right now because get it situated so it's a little quicker for you to type in your questions. And just note that you'll be able to see the answers to any questions that we type out to other people. So it's a nice companion to the webinar. But we know you're going to have some questions because we're not going to be able to get to everything. And we're going to be expressly kind of asking here for you what you're maybe kind of hoping to see next year. So get ready to type in anything and everything there. And this is being recorded, so you'll be able to see it again and again if you want. So there is that. And at the top of your screen, if you noticed, there's a little view options, little drop down, and you can use that to exit full screen mode if you need to get to something on your computer. But otherwise, keep it full screen, sit back and strap in. And hey, Paul, take it away. Last webinar of the year.
Thank you, Jer. Hello, welcome everybody. Let's get this slideshow going. My name is Paul Houchin, and as Jer already said, this is the last webinar of the year. And here at LandFX, we've done a lot in 2019 to advance our software and help get our users the most out of their patronage. So for this final webinar of the year and the decade, we just wanted to take a look back at some of the features that we added in 2019 and then give a little peek at the process and how we are able to achieve a couple of these items. Before I get started, I want to give a little disclaimer that this will be a little less instructive and a little lighter than our other webinars. And I don't actually plan on going into CAD to show off some of the items. There'll be screenshots and I'll introduce them so that you can sort of take your pick at what you want to dive further into. But if you stay tuned, maybe you'll see something that we've done that you weren't already aware of. So here's the outline of the day. I first wanted to go through a list of some of this year's highlights. If you came by our booth for the ASLA show or the IA show in Vegas, you may have seen these highlights in a video we had playing on loop. These highlights will likely be released as a couple of power tip videos here shortly, so look out for those. And then I think as a company, we like to be open with our users. So the second half of the webinar will be a bit of a look at the inside and the processes that go on with development within a smaller software company. And so for this insider's look, we'll go through an overview of the lighting module, as well as some of the things we do to create our FX CAD. And then we'll wrap it up at the end and take questions. So let's get into some development highlights of 2019. Before we get started, make sure you check out our update history page for a full list of our LandFX updates. That's here at this web link. If we just pull this open, this goes through every update that we release. We list out all the different features that we add and fixes for bugs and stuff like that. So having an eye on this is pretty important to learning all the things that we do introduce to the software. So first up, we updated a lot of our dialog boxes. We switched them over to OpenDCL, which provided us the opportunity to update a lot of the dialog box designs earlier this year. Here are a couple examples of those. Up top, we got the detail, size, and scale box that was switched to insert detail template. So it's already got a better name, and it's a little more intuitive and easier to navigate there. Our preferences dialog box also took a big change. And so it's a little cleaner, a little more room for your layers so that you can actually fit all the name of the layer in there and see the color that belongs with it. And it's just a little better of a layout there. And then another example is our 3D connection dialog box, which went from just the SketchUp connection to 3D connection because it does, you can export to Rhino, Revit, and SketchUp. Another thing we did is we updated our menus, and I'll get into more of this when I go into what we did for FXCAD, but we have a new support for HiDPI resolution settings. So we took this up as an opportunity to just reimagine and update all of our icons and ribbons and how they're laid out, and so that they look a bit nicer this year. And this one came from quite a few different user requests who wanted the plant callouts to be M liters as opposed to the liters that they were before. And this actually started in 2018, sort of conceptualizing this project in the late 2018 months, and then we did complete it in 2019. And if you do want to choose M liters as your planting callouts, just open up your planting preferences, click on the plant label preview box there, and you can actually switch between our old style block callouts and the new M liter styles there. And that really just opens up the door so that you can use all of the neat M liter functions and features with our plant callouts. So if you head over to the Annotate tab in the ribbon, we have these different tools that help you organize your M liters for plant callouts now. So that's a really neat feature. We also updated what we do with generic plant symbols. Before, they were very basic. You kind of just clicked and resized the plant. Now you can apply the keyboard commands to generic plant symbols. So you don't even have to have data set for your project. You can just open up CAD and start placing generic plants. But when you do want to assign plant data to those generic plants, you can now use the Edit Plant tool to click on the plant and make it a plant. So we completely revamped the generic plant symbols. Another big one is the Dimstyle saving interface. This is in your preferences. When you do set up your customized dim styles, you can then save them into the LandFX preferences, which is something we had before, but the dialog box was a little, I want to say, not as straightforward as it is now. And so we updated that so it's a little cleaner, a little more organized. You can switch between your imperial units and your metric units, choose which style of dim style you want to be saving into. And when you do click the save button, you get a nice preview of all the different system variables that are in effect. And you get a little date stamp next to the check mark, letting you know that you have in fact saved your dim style. The dim style dialog box also has a preview button, and this is new. You can click on that preview button and it actually opens up a new layout, and it places all of those dimensions settings onto that layout. It's a neat 8.5 by 11 page so that you can quickly print that out if you want to keep a hard copy of your standards for your office. And once again, it does display all the system variable settings. So very good for keeping track and record of your dimension styles. We've also improved a lot of the, or a few AutoCAD commands. Here are those. The FX chop up top automates the trim command, which allows you to trim multiple lines with a fence selection. And that just cuts out a lot of using trim and making various options within trim. So it's one command versus trim plus a few different clicks and options within. FX lay isolate replaces the lay ISO command, which has issues isolating land effects blocks. If you use lay ISO, the regular AutoCAD command, and you click on a land effects block, you can have basically everything in your drawing disappear or some other wacky behavior. So lay FX underscore lay isolate really cuts down on that process. So you can just click on land effects blocks and it'll just isolate those. FX underscore lay freeze replaces the lay freeze command, which has issues toggling between objects in the drawing and objects in the XREF. And now you can seamlessly freeze object layers in XREFs and in the drawings without having to adjust any of the settings for that command. XLayer improves on XList by allowing you to change the layer color and line type information in your XREF by simply clicking on the object in the drawing. And then we have Xcopy and Xcaro, which is two options for the Mokaro command in AutoCAD, which stands for move, copy, rotate. Xcopy allows you to copy land effects blocks and data, such as plants and associated labels, without disrupting the data association. And then the same goes for Xcaro, which allows you to copy and rotate those items without impeding on the connection of land effects objects and data. For more information on those commands, we have a couple of power tips that we released earlier this year. I would recommend checking those out. The first one is demand a better command, and the second is chop and other secret keyboard commands. Additionally, our content team has been very busy busting out new content for our block library. So in addition to that, we've also realized that our previous naming conventions weren't highly standardized. So a big portion of this year was actually dedicated to updating our block naming conventions. So we have much higher standards when we create our new blocks. And then we had to convert all of those existing blocks to the new naming conventions. And we applied those to our plan graphics and elevation graphics. And we will continue to update the current block library in the time to come. But if you want to check those out, I highly recommend going through our plan graphics, which is located in the FX site tab, and also the elevation graphics. The library there has grown incredibly, and there is a lot more content available to be checked and added in there as well. And we're going to continue to improve upon this library and add more content to it. So also, if you have any requests or things that you would like to see in the library for blocks, please let us know and we can add it to the list. So that was just a few of the highlights of the year. And we're going to move into lighting development now. And so I just threw together some stuff that I found in our project management interface, or website, and some of the correspondence that we had between the different departments, so that we can show off what we did to get through to lighting. So we already have a pretty robust planting, detail, and irrigation module. And so it only makes sense that we would move on and create a similar strong lighting module as well. Earlier in 2019, we set some basic goals for what we wanted to achieve with lighting in 2019. First and foremost, we wanted to overhaul the lighting system and have it ready to show off for the ASLA and IA shows, which we just completed. We wanted to incorporate a way to map out light throw or use photometrics to kind of show how much light is actually being produced by the lighting fixtures. And we needed to include power source and wiring data. And then we wanted to also automate as much as we could. So having calculations be automated by the software would be a big benefit for our users. And then we wanted to input proper manufacturer project data, our product data. So in the very early stages of lighting development, we needed to wrap our heads around all the components that kind of go into lighting. So before we could even start mocking things up, we kind of needed to know what we were going after. And so we needed to look into what elements factor into lighting design and implementation. We needed to find out what the designer's needs are, and also what our manufacturers were expecting from designers. So that led into research. And I broke this down. There's the technical aspects of the research, and then there's the user base of the research. So technical side, we needed to know how lighting works. And so we studied up on low voltage lighting, which is kind of the first step that we took. We needed to understand the terminology behind it all. We needed to figure out what are the standards for lighting plans, how voltage drops are calculated, and then also look into IES data, which provides those photometrics. So here is something that Alex actually gave to me, and it's a study that he did on actually producing photometrics and understanding IES data. And then we also needed to understand what the user's needs are and also the manufacturer side of things. So a questionnaire was performed and interviews were done for various clients of ours and then also manufacturers so that we can get a firm understanding of what the designer needs and what the manufacturer's needs are. So once we kind of were able to wrap our heads around the needs for lighting, we then began with ideation, mock-ups, and meetings. So we went through, and this is just going to be some examples of some of the things that we did for mocking up what goes on behind the scenes. So Forrest had to mock up the back end, and this is how we actually input the data, which then comes in through the software. So here we've got a place to input the manufacturer, the types of products that they produce, series, models, lamps, and beam spreads. Here we have some diagrams on what the different workflow for lighting would be. And of course, we had to mock up the front end as well. So these are dialog box mock-ups produced so that we could feel out how the user's experience would be. And just a couple of iterations here. Power source started off very simple, but quickly became much more complex as we figured what actually all needs to go into the power source data. Here we have an early iteration of the wire data mock-up dialog box. And here is a schedule proposed mock-up. So the existing one up top shows kind of what we had before, which was very basic and clearly too long. So we then looked at that and had to reimagine what it would look like under the new system. Once we got through the conceptual stage and had all our mockups approved, Jer, our programmer, was able to implement the dialogues into the system and set it all up. And by mid-August, an internal LandFX update was distributed and a team chat was set up amongst 9 team members to begin testing the lighting module. And here we have placing some of those light fixtures, connecting the wires, and then also connecting the wire to transformers, which was new. And here we have just some of our internal conversations going on with testing, showing off that the VLX update was released to us. We all tested it and then gave feedback. And as the feedback was received, new updates were given, testing happened, and then we eventually got to a point where it was a releasable product. So in mid-August, so August 26th, the lighting manager was released in update 15.75, and it pulls from the new database with all the additional fields and photometrics. Once we had this kind of down, Jason Hilford, our technical writer, was able to whip out some documentation pages on the new lighting features so that when you go to this page, you can click on the lighting manager link and read all about the new feature. The Irrigation Association has a show every year. And in 2019, it was in Las Vegas, and we attended that and entered the new product contest for the landscape lighting category. And here's a photo of Jeremiah giving the presentation on the trade show floor. And the next day, it was voted upon, and LandFX won first place for the landscape lighting category of the new product contest. So now that we've got our low voltage lighting set up the way it is, we still have a lot to go. Sorry, we still have a lot more to do. And so in 2020, we're really going to be updating some of the items for the lighting module. Some of the things that we're looking at doing is improving it so that it is compatible with standard lighting or high voltage, which is a whole nother beast. We're going to be focusing on adding a lot more manufacturers to the system. And then also we want to add more data options for the fixtures, like height adjustments. And then also the 3D rendering seems to be a pretty important part of lighting, so that you could see how the light actually interacts with your 3D space in the design. So we're going to be looking at smoothing out the process when moving from CAD to a 3D model and then rendering it with light. So look out for that in 2020 and beyond. We're going to be focusing on that quite a bit. And let us know if you have any ideas or needs for what you want to see in lighting, and we can always take those into account as we're going through development. So I also wanted to show off FXCAD because that's a really cool bit of software that we produce. And it's still AutoCAD, but we sort of change it around so that it's a little bit better for landscape architects and irrigation designers. And so let's get into FXCAD. And this is a development project that spans pretty much all the departments of the office. And so here are some of the bigger projects that came from this. First off, we need to update the menus. Like I said before, we had a new need for high DPI or high resolution compatibility. And so we need to update the menus to be compatible with those higher resolutions. And while we're doing that, we figured we might as well just redo all the icons anyways, as a lot of them were pretty old. So we could just totally update how it looks so that it's a nice, new, crisp, presentable. There. So, and then we needed to focus on the graphics and branding of the software, taking it from AutoCAD and changing it into FXCAD. We needed to create the installer, and then also create a web page for it all. Here's a little sneak peek at our project management and some of the development projects that we went through to accomplish FXCAD. And here's a website sales and content and graphics projects. And then we move on to documentation and the switch over. So let's start at the beginning. In March, Autodesk released AutoCAD 2020. Once it was released, we immediately installed AutoCAD and began testing with the plugin. And due to the new resolution support, we needed to update our ribbon buttons. And at this time, Forrest is our webmaster, Forrest Williams, installs the developer version of 2020 and begins mocking up new icons for the buttons and the ribbon. So here's a look at the first iteration of planting ribbon buttons. And then once those were submitted, feedback was given, and then some ideas for updating the colors were also provided for Forrest. And so he was able to implement those. And here's a second iteration of those buttons. And it's getting closer, but it's still quite not there. And by April, we were able to lock down the look of these ribbons, and they look great. So once we kind of had our ribbons and icons set, Amanda Berry got to work on reordering the CAD interface to fit the needs of landscape architects. And here's a rough mock-up of switching around the tools so that it makes a little more sense. And here's another one for the site tab there. Just really organizing it well so that it matches the flow of the rest of the software. And don't forget about irrigation. So in addition to reorganizing the tools that were already there, Amanda also mocked up new buttons for our LandFX CAD tools. So here's a couple of quick mock-ups of what those Xcopy and Xcrow might look like in the ribbon. So very quick conceptual stage. And then Forrest is able to take those and turn them into really nice, crisp vector graphics, which can then be taken into the menu file and loaded into CAD. So by May, all of the ribbon updates are done. And once we kind of have the ribbons done, we need to, or at least a direction going with those, we need to rebrand the software. So in April, we created a logo for FXCAD, an icon, and then also a color palette or a color scheme. And with that, we had to update some of the imagery for AutoCAD. So here's the splash image, or a couple of iterations of that splash image. And feedback from management so that we know what to go with. And once we have those design elements in place, we can then go ahead and swap out a lot of the AutoCAD imagery and icons with Land Effects stuff so that it fits our brand. Here we're swapping out the various different sized icons and then the installation imagery here. AutoCAD has their fun conceptual photography images, but we switched those out with some of the entries for the photo contest and then provide some credit for the companies that provided those photos. While rebranding is in progress, Mike Bennett develops the initial installer for testing. And all the imagery is done by June and added to the installer. And once that installer is compiled with all the updated elements for FXCAD, we go through thorough testing of FXCAD 2020 to make sure that there are no issues with installing it and running it. Before we release it, and before even the installer is finally compiled, the web department goes on to creating a website for FXCAD 2020. Jason Hilford, our technical writer, goes through and edits all of the text within the website and also begins creating the documentation for installing FXCAD 2020. And at the end of June, Amanda Berry gives a webinar on all the new features of FXCAD 2020. So at this point, it's basically done and pending a release. So early July, FXCAD 2020 is released. And then in mid-July, Amanda Berry also does a What's New with FXCAD 2020 Power Tip video. And it's done. So I've gone through a lot very quickly. So I actually do want to take some time now to go through any questions. If you want to see maybe a little more on some of these things that I did kind of fly through, I can take questions now and maybe give a demonstration.
Yeah, be a great time for people to get any questions in, ideas for where you want to see next year. Any questions on all of that? Want to know what it felt like to stand on the stage and hold that trophy over my head? That's pretty fun. But I don't see any questions coming in, so we'll give them another second. We have a sort of an unrelated question that came in here from Tucker. Basically, he wants to know what's the best and quickest way to get their feet wet with the program. So you want to maybe show him the Land Effects command?
Certainly. So as you see here, I have switched to FXCAD with Land Effects loaded. So if you want to get your feet wet, Jared was saying that you could use the Land Effects command, which is just Land Effects straight with no extra characters or spaces. Hit enter. And it should pull open this welcome to Land Effects web window here. And so we've got a little video that can show you what the 30-day challenge is all about. And down here, you can go through the 30-day challenge, which is a series of different challenges for these 3 different modules, planting, irrigation, or details. If you click on one, you start with challenge number 1, and it shows you a little bit of how it works. And once you read through the text here, and as you get into it, it'll actually start asking you for things to accomplish. So here, it just says, take a look at this power tip. If you watch it, you can then move on, but I didn't watch it, so it knows that I tried to cheat. So you actually have to go through and watch that video. And it's a great place to just find some of those resources that are great for getting you into the software. So how to start a project in LandFX, that's one of the most basic things you should do right away. And so learning all about that is important. And yeah, and go through it. And there's just 15 steps for planting. Also, if you have gone through this and you want some more, there's a lot of resources on our website. We do a power tip video every week. We do a webinar every week. The power tip videos are just these 2-minute quick snippets of a tip or a trick that we've come across or that users have recommended to us to really just make your life easier when working in the software. Our webinars span from the very basics of AutoCAD to advanced user techniques. So definitely check those out. And then of course our documentation is amazing and very thorough and has a wide range of everything that we could think of that we could throw down on our website to help you learn everything there is to know about LandFX.
Well, cool. Well, I had fun. I hope everybody here had fun. I think we'll just go ahead and wrap up a little early. Remind everyone that, you know, all of these little these development items have always come from users. You know, it was the number of users who kept saying they wanted something for lighting that really egged us on to develop that lighting module. You know, the Xcopy and Xcoro came from good friend Steve Cook, a user down in Southern California, who wanted a better way to take completed irrigation items in parking islands and copy them to different parking islands with the pipe to save time. You know, so, you know, just always those little snippets like that, even little auto lisp shareware tools you rely on, we go, oh, hey, we can probably integrate something like that in. So just remember that all this really relies on you, the user, to let us know your challenges or, you know, where you want to see the software continue to expand and improve. But so please always feel free to call us or email us and let us know your ideas. But other than that, I'm just going to wish everyone a happy weekend.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Jer. Obviously, I didn't get to everything we did this year. There's a whole lot more. When I initially created this outline, it was rather large, and I just felt I needed to cut off a lot of stuff. So I didn't touch anything on irrigation, which we did introduce a lot of new irrigation features. We also developed a planting effects module for Revit. I'm not sure if I should be saying that out loud.
Yeah, we
but
can. But
that's
it's
coming.
official releases next year, you know.
Next year we'll
yeah, it's
officially release that. So a lot of stuff happened this year, and we have a lot of plans for next year, and we hope to keep going with this. So we value your input, and if you have any requests for features, or if you want to let us know how you feel about our current features, we'll have an open ear for those. And then we just want to thank you all for staying with us and letting this all happen. And well, I guess with that, I'll just say until next year, you know, have a good one.